Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome all of you back to Ohio Exopolitics. I'm your host, Mark Snyder, and we're going to be talking about the Billy Meier case this evening. One of the most interesting, probably by far the most interesting UFO extraterrestrial contact case that I've come across. Really, the writings of Edward Albert Meier, the 39 books and the over 600 transcripts of his contacts, cover all the big questions in life. Who are we? What happened in our past? What's going to happen in our future? What are the stages of evolution that human societies go through? How do these higher, more advanced extraterrestrial human societies, how they travel from star to star with almost no time passing? What is the structure of the creation, the universe, and who and what is the universal consciousness? What is the human spirit? How does reincarnation work? All of these very deep and profound questions are answered. The case is not about a sighting or two sightings or a random contact between a human being and an extraterrestrial being. It's really a whole body of teaching that's designed to help us with our evolution. The purpose of our evolution here on the earth is consciousness-based evolution. We have a material consciousness as well as a spiritual consciousness. And what controls our material consciousness is something in the Meier material called the psyche. The psyche controls the thoughts and the feelings of the material consciousness. Your material consciousness would include your personality, your intellect, things like that. Your spiritual consciousness, on the other hand, is not in the physical. There's a area of your spirit form called the gamut, which controls the thoughts and the feelings associated with the spiritual consciousness. Your spiritual consciousness requires material lifetimes in order to evolve. And the purpose of our life is the evolution of our consciousness. The purpose of our life is to grow in wisdom. Now, in the ancient past, human beings here on the earth had their normal evolution interrupted and disturbed. The first time, probably 389,000 years ago, when a group of extraterrestrial humans called the Lyrians were here for the first time. A couple million of them actually came to the earth, and they violated certain rules and regulations that they had within their own society, and they interacted in a very damaging way with Earth humanity, who they called the Evas. Eva means to bear. And today, in part because of those actions of those Lyrians and other extraterrestrial groups that came here, we are a humankind that is ill in its consciousness. And one of Billy's books was written to combat the illness in our consciousness. And it's called The Might of the Thoughts. And unfortunately, the humanity here on the earth sometimes gets into a situation that's called Ausartung in the German, which means to get very badly out of control of the good human nature. Now, our negative thinking and our positive thinking can lead to this Ausartung state, where we're out of control of the good human nature. But a neutral, positive, equalized mode of thinking is needed to repair the psyche. Remember, the psyche controls the thoughts and the feelings associated with the material consciousness. Your spiritual consciousness will never get out of control. It cannot be harmed by anything in the material realm, but your physical, your material consciousness can. So the human being has to learn to stop doing things that he does not want to do. One of the things that we often do is think thoughts that we really don't want to think. Have you ever been repeating a song over and over again in your mind and you don't even know why you're doing it, and it's going to take effort to stop repeating this song that you may have liked or may still like, but when you hear these things over and over again, they tend to become a bit of an annoyance. But we have these repeating thoughts that we really don't want. These are habitual thoughts. Habitual thoughts can be very dangerous. We should be thinking consciously. We should make choices about our thinking. Just like a plant sprouts a seed, and therefore that seed can grow into a plant, everything springs forth from the might of the human being's thoughts. So we need to learn to clarify our thoughts. Sometimes that involves repeating certain principles and thoughts over again so that they become clearer. And your consciousness is like a garden. If it is not correctly maintained, you'll have these wildly growing negative thoughts, which can have a confusing and destructive effect. Have you ever experienced that? And once these negative thoughts, these unhealthy thoughts are created and animated, they develop their own life, just like weeds in your garden. So we need to reach in there and pull out those negative, destructive thoughts that tend to echo in our mind. And people can become disturbed in their psyche because of these uncontrolled thoughts that tend to repeat. So we need to free ourselves from this cycle of repeating thoughts that can come about. If we don't, we can have a psychical disorder that can lead to a psychic illness. So it's very important that we analyze our thoughts, and when those very negative or even very positive thoughts start to come in, that we negate those thoughts out. Otherwise, we can make ourselves miserable, negatively affect our health. Almost everything in the human condition can be traced back as its root to the might of our own thoughts. If you have positive, equalized, neutral positive thoughts, it will help your well-being. Your thoughts can determine your health, your well-being. If you have anxiety and fear, you know that thousands of people die every year just because of anxiety and fear. And our thoughts affect our physical appearance. Do you know that certain kinds of negative and unhealthy thoughts cause wrinkles to emerge in your face? And lots of kinds of foolish thinking can cause self-created suffering, particularly if we have wrongly understood and wrongly expressed pride. We can contribute to our own unhealthfulness. Just the same way, your face can be imprinted with strong and pure thoughts. If a person has lived peacefully and harmoniously, then even their death will be like a magnificent sunset. And we prepare on our deathbed to cross over to a realm of spiritual light. That's where we came from. the human spirit form resides in an area in the midbrain called the superior colliculus. And the superior colliculus controls our eye movements, it controls our gaze, it controls the spirit form radiates a kind of energy that goes throughout the body, and it brings life to every part of the body. The spirit form is the real you. When you die, your spirit form is going to leave your body, and it will go into the realm of the fine matter world, the spiritual realm. And there's something in the spiritual realm called the overall consciousness block. And it's a storage bank in the other world. It's actually created by our spirit form. And your material consciousness, the consciousness block from your previous life, is processed in this overall consciousness block. And those evolutive values, which correspond to truth and reality, are pulled and converted out of your material consciousness, out of this consciousness block, and they're transferred in an impulse-based form from the material consciousness into the spiritual consciousness. So that's the way your spirit form stores the information from your previous life, which is of value, which is neutral positive. These would be things like patience, love, all of the good evolutive values will be stored in the spirit form. Now, this is how the spirit form evolves. We spend about a lifetime and a half in the spiritual realm. And then my understanding is the spirit form will signal creation when it's ready for another material lifetime. And that spirit form will be placed into the midbrain of the child. A new material consciousness is placed into the child. So your consciousness, the aware part of your consciousness, is new when you reincarnate. In other words, you get a new personality, a new perspective on life. But deep within your subconscious is the wisdom of your predecessor personalities. And the universal consciousness that has created storage banks of information in the universe, and even the planet has planetary storage banks. And these storage banks will impulse the child as it grows up, and the predecessor personalities will inspire. And this is kind of the way that we benefit from our wisdom that we have gotten from our previous lives. So that's the way wisdom builds on top of wisdom. Now, one interesting thing is much, much more actually happens in the unconscious mind than we realize. Even picking a partner, a mate, a lot of that happens in the unconscious mind. So I have a clip here that I'm going to play that will talk a bit about the unconscious mind.
Electrochemical signals going around a bunch of circuits inside your brain. There's no windows in your skull. Okay? The only way you get information in is through your sensory systems, from your memory, or from your cognition, that is, you making it up. Okay? So what these electrochemical signals see about the world are other electrochemical signals coming in from other systems that form this grand simulation of reality around us. So, it's not that the world around you isn't there. It's there. but you've never lived there. Okay, you've never even been there for a visit. The only place you've ever been is inside your mind.
Every morning when we open our eyes, unconscious circuitry conjures a simulation we perceive as our world. In this great illusion, in our mind's eye, the only part we appear to operate actively is where we consciously place our attention. If this young man happens to meet the love of his life today, he will only realize it if his unconscious mind shares the same view. Do you know, for example, how exactly you brush your teeth? No. Your brain attends to such routine things without even bothering you. Your consciousness only switches on for new or important things. That is because we can cope with no more than 4 or 5 units of information at the same time. For those who don't want to believe this, American Clifford Pickover has invented the perfect test. Pick one of the symbols and count how many times it blinks. Now pick a card. Take a very close look at it and repeat to yourself the suit and the value 3 times. Then look back at one of the symbols below and count how often it blinks. And now, have a look. We removed your card, right? A miracle? No. We just replaced all the cards. Here are the originals. You simply didn't notice because your working memory was overloaded.
Suppressing those things in front of us that we don't pay attention to is something that we do all the time. And most of the times, we do it unconsciously. We don't realize that there are huge portions of the world that we are turning invisible by the very act of paying attention to a particular object or a particular task.
Deciding on the right clothes for the office may appear trivial. However, unconscious circuitry in our heads will always have the last word. Scientists estimate that these circuits can simultaneously process 200,000 times more data than the conscious mind. That's because our conscious mind is limited to the cerebral cortex, a wrinkled layer just 1 millimeter thick that wraps around your brain like a bathing cap. About 15 billion nerve cells can connect to activate new networks in fractions of a second. However, the fireworks of conscious thinking devours up more energy than the muscles of a top athlete, which is why our brain normally tries to do without our conscious mind. The brainstem regulates vital bodily functions like breathing and heart rate. The cerebellum coordinates all motoric routines like walking or grasping. And the limbic system knows us better than we know ourselves because it regulates everything that we feel. And this unconscious filter, the thalamus, is in charge of deciding what is new and important enough to share with us. That's why our brain always seems to know more than we know. Perhaps that's the reason why we have so little influence on that which we are and what we do, and even on what we wear.
Okay, the mind is an amazing thing. Remember, we have a material consciousness as well as a spiritual consciousness. And Billy's had a whole lot of contacts. If you listened to this show before, you know that very much. He had 11 years of contacts with a man named Svath, 11 years of contacts with a woman named Asket, And somewhere around 1975 or so, he started having these contacts with this extraterrestrial woman named Semyase, who these people originally allowed themselves to be called the Pleiadians. However, in 1995, when they left the Earth, they revealed their true identity as the Pleiaren. Semyase, at the time of these contacts, was 344 years old, but she looked like a supermodel. These people lived to be about 1,000 years. She was a young, pretty woman with fair skin, blue eyes, light blonde hair. She would land her ship in Schmidruti, there, Hinter Schmidruti, in the beginning, and step out and walk over to Billy and start having these conversations. The 10th conversation that Billy had with her occurred on Wednesday, March 26, 1975 at 3:20 p.m. And Semyase started talking about the human spirit, which I began our discussion about. And she said that the human spirit does not die nor sleep during our deepest sleep, but that it records all of our thoughts and impulsations. It will even tell you if your thinking is right or wrong if you have learned to pay attention. She said that every human has a spirit, and the spirit is the bearer of the creative realm. So we all have this spirit form that is the real you. And she also said that the human's yearning lies for the joy that remains, for this imperishable life. So on the spirit side, in the spiritual realm, there is an existence that is free from disturbance. And we all kind of yearn for that. Yearning is an intense longing for something. It can be called a deep longing. And there's sometimes a bit of sadness associated with that. Billy experienced, in a conscious way, the deep tranquility of being on the spiritual side. And that occurred in Contact 31, when he was on the Great Spacer ship. When they would jump from star system to star system, Billy would get this deep tranquility and unbelievable peacefulness. He said it was almost as if eternity was flowing through me, an absolute timelessness, which is no longer subject to outside influences, such as restlessness, strife, and worries that trouble the consciousness. Imagine not being disturbed in your consciousness at all. So as the ship would jump through hyperspace, he would see the stars on the roof of this great spacer blur just for a second, and he would be filled with his deep, incredible peace. He described this peace in this way. He said, this light, this radiant light, such profound love, calm, and peace it has. Oh, now I understand. I can't see or hear, but I am finding. I feel I live. How beautiful is this peace? Empfinden is a German word that means the finest spiritual perceiving of the love of creation. Billy, in one of his later writings, would write that the incredible splendor of nature is the visible expression of the love of creation, and that creation radiates love. So that at every moment, at every place, the human being can experience the radiating love of creation. Love is the highest principle in creation, and everything follows that principle in absolute logic. Therefore, in the Goblet of Truth, in chapter 25, it says, "You humankind of Earth, you must strive and evolve as individuals in yourselves from out of your own consciousness, as well as out of the thoughts and the feelings, in order to come to the truth and to the fine spiritual perceiving of the love of creation. Creation, the life-giving energy of creation, attempts to come into harmonious concord with all life, with the world itself, and with the entire universe. But humans, we tend to close ourselves off from the love of creation. And because we close ourselves off to this radiating love, to us, the world feels like a place without love, especially since we're destroying the beautiful wooded areas, the beautiful forests all over the world. So in a sense, we are creating an unnatural environment where people don't get the support of being out in nature. They don't get so much is still unconscious. So much is still at this lower level. We have to open our minds up so that we kind of awaken. It's interesting, and Contact 229 talks about our dreams a little bit, because again, that's the unconscious and the subconscious kind of expressing itself. And it says in Contact 229, the human beings will let themselves be blinded by illusionary images, which they awaken to become reality. So they believe to touch something that does not even exist. Thus they will walk on paths that only the eyes can see, but not the mind and reason. And this path will be a dream that will become reality. Therefore, the time will come when human beings will no longer be able to distinguish between what exists and what does not exist. Well, I will tell you, folks, I think we are in that time right now. It's called the third millennium. And in the third millennium, the people of the earth will kind of have a lost look on their face, and they kind of wonder, because we have coming out of the ruling class a dark order that's trying to take control of everything financial, trying to take control of the entire earth as we know it. And that's leading to hopelessness among the people of the earth. So we've got to learn not to be hopeless. And I have a caller. I don't know if they just want to listen or if they want to come on. I'll see if I can bring them on quickly. If they don't answer me, I'll assume they don't want to say anything. 651.
Hi, Mark. It's Janet.
Janet.
I'm just listening. Hi. How are you today?
How are you?
Good. I'm just listening.
Okay.
So I don't have a question yet, but I'll let you know when I do.
Excellent. I'll put you on hold then. Put you on mute. Anyway, I thought Solaris was going to call in. No, Solaris, I don't see you on my switchboard. Please call in if you'd like. We'd love to have you on the show. I appreciate Janet calling in and listening as well. I think I'm going to play just a little bit of relaxing music for a while, and then maybe we'll get into a little bit of this dark stuff that the Myra information's talking about. So anyway, let's take a slight music break. We'll be back in a few minutes. You're listening to Ohio Exopolitics. I'm your host, Mark Snyder. Hello, everyone. I want to welcome all of you back to Ohio Exopolitics. This is the second half hour of the show. I've been joined by another host who has a show on Dark Matter Radio. I think it's called Hyperspace, and she also has a show on Revolution Radio. Her name is Solaris Blue Raven. Solaris, how are you today?
I'm good, Mark. How are you?
I'm doing very good. And I don't know if you caught any at the beginning of the show, but I've been talking about the human spirit form. I've been talking about the conscious mind and the subconscious mind and spiritual kind of things. And the second half of the show, unless you wanted to add anything to any of that, I was going to dive into some current events. And one of the things that one of my favorite Maya writings talks about, and it's, the writing is called The Goblet of Truth. It talks about a dark order that's coming out of our ruling class, and that is trying to take control of everything. And they've created what's called a consciousness-conditioned tyranny, a tyranny that is really aimed at our consciousness. So maybe all of this does kind of fit together in an interesting way. Do you have any thoughts or observations on any of the things that I've just mentioned?
Well, I want to say, first of all, I was listening, and it was a great show, and I really appreciated your information. And secondly, yeah, I agree it's a consciousness war. I believe that's their whole motive behind everything, because they realize that we manifest reality and that we can change everything through thought and higher consciousness, which negates what their agenda is about. So, yeah, there's a war on consciousness without a doubt. And I don't think anybody has to put special glasses on to see that.
You know, it's really interesting because the power of our thoughts affect things that we would never realize. And one of the things that affects is our health. And having healthy thoughts leads to a healthy physical body. I find that amazing. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, I agree with you. No, I totally agree, and that's one of the things with, when you get down to electronic warfare or psychotronic warfare or targeted individuals, then you can understand how their health declines because they're being bombarded by negative dialogue, which does affect them. psychologically, energetically after a while. So, yeah, they understand this, by the way. They understand that thoughts create health. And, of course, we all know that if you work with martial arts at all or chi energy, then you're well aware that consciousness and energy all go hand in hand for health and balance.
I saw a Star Trek episode the other day. There's 3 versions of the original Star Trek Next Generation, and then Voyager. And in the Voyager show, there's the Vulcan on the show is a black guy, and he was subject to mind control at one point in his life. And they showed him when he was, being tortured with mind control and all this. And I thought, wow, what a bizarre way to introduce this subject to the public in a Star Trek episode. Isn't that amazing?
It is. Well, look at the Borg. Look at the transhumanism with the Borg. It's the same thing. You have a hive collective that operates as one.
Do you think the elite? Do you think the elite want us to turn us into kind of a collective like a Borg?
I get a sense that they're trying to negate spirituality and whatever means they will, whatever agenda they want to use, they'll do that. I think that they're trying to keep a small select group of people to program, and I suspect they'll be younger. I don't think they want anything to do with the dinosaurs like us who are evolved and ascended in consciousness. We're more of a threat, so they probably try to take beings like us out. But yeah, I mean, that's what I'm seeing insofar as wanting to calibrate people for a type of enslavement. And of course, they've done that with on a soft level with just basic, the way that people are functioning from day to day with their lifestyles and of course banks and this and that.
You're so clued in. I love talking to you, Slayer.
Thank you. Well, likewise, Mark. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate hopping on.
I have a clip here on ISIS, and I wonder if this whole ISIS threat is part of this attempt by this dark order that the Meyer information talks about to control everything. Not that ISIS isn't a real threat, but it may be a monster that we've created either intentionally or unintentionally. And I have an interesting clip here that'll talk a little bit about ISIS funding. I won't play it all, but it's a rather long clip. Maybe I'll play 2 or 3 minutes of it, and then we can talk about it.
Doing here, InfoWarsLife.com or 888-253-3139. And I want to thank you all for your amazing support as well. Again, that's InfoWarsLife.com or 888-253-3139. Now, when I see a news story like this, I begin to connect the dots to what's previously happened. Hillary Clinton 4.5 years ago said, bombarding with U.S. and NATO air power Libya was the thing to do. Gaddafi was a tyrant, and freedom fighters out of eastern Libya were wonderful people.
Well, let me quiet that just for a second. I want to throw something out. Solaris, have you ever heard of the Clinton body count?
Yes, I have. Yeah, it seems like they take out everybody that gives them a hard time.
They do. There's like 40 or 50 people that have worked for the Clintons or been associated with the Clintons that have ended up dead in mysterious ways.
Jeez.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Do you know that Hillary's driving around right now, America, in a van, trying to appear like a normal person?
It's ridiculous. She should be tried for treason, Mark. I don't understand this at all. This is what I mean by the circus. What's going on here? Why are the American people, playing into it?
It's totally crazy. Let me play a little more of this clip, and then we'll come back on. Here we go.
Poverty and war to Europe. Now, normally I'd say, hey, Africa, you're having a bunch of kids. You want to get to Italy that has welfare way down the state. Italy's totally bankrupt. The big bankers want to legalize you to come there, to be a political bloc, to be dependent. I'd be against it. But Western governments went into Libya, the most stable country in Africa, that was stabilizing all of Africa. And Gaddafi had worked with the West for 8 years. He was letting Western investment come in. They betrayed him. They set him up. They killed him in the street. And now they've turned it over to Islamic State ISIS, who's using it as a...
Now, isn't this interesting? They killed Gaddafi, and they did the same thing with Saddam Hussein, who we put in power anyway. Isn't there a pattern forming here? This is, we topple these leaders and these Middle Eastern countries. We bring them to power, and we knock them down. And
yep,
wow,
yeah.
Go ahead, comment. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, Mark, they set the stage. I mean, it's all about a game, although it's not a game when you're taking lives of people and innocent people are along for the ride. But literally, if they're setting stages right and left, I mean, they've been doing this for a long time, and they have trained Al-Qaeda, and they have trained this stupid ISIS group. I mean, so we created the monster, not us per se, but the CIA and these other agencies. And I mean, so basically, they created the monster to do what, pray tell? Destroy America? Because it certainly looks that way to me.
Yes, it does. And you had a great show a couple of months ago with a guy named Chip Tatum, who is now on Veterans Today, and he was actually, for a while, a paid assassin of the government, wasn't he?
Yep, he certainly was. Yeah, he has a lot of really good information. So yeah, I mean, that's what's so interesting. These guys are coming forward. A lot of them are, just to kind of communicate the kind of dirt in the government.
Well, the one thing I remembered him saying from your show that I thought was so interesting was that George Bush Sr. was on some kind of psychiatric medication, and when he would go off, man, he would have these, he would be dreaming up all this crazy stuff that these hitmen were going to do, or it was going to happen. Do you remember that from your show?
Yeah, and I think that, honestly, that most of them are on some kind of they're compromised in some way. Any one of the presidential candidates or presidents in general, in my opinion, are compromised, whether it's through medication or through psychotronics or entrainment. You have to be. There's no way they can allow somebody rogue to be out of control there. And I'm saying rogue as in independent in consciousness and not putting up with the corruption. But these guys, I mean, they're all compromised. Everybody's compromised in those divisions. And then, there's not one president that's been clean.
Isn't this crazy? I mean, it's just
really insane.
How did we ever end up like this?
I don't know, but when I leave the planet, I'm not coming back. I tell everybody this, Far away I'm going.
Okay, let's pick back up on the clip here.
Keep and continue finding them. I agree, and I believe it's exposing compartmentalization, because the average person in the FBI or the military or a corporation's not bad. It's that the top-down disinformation is what's happening.
Yeah, there's a psychological warfare that they push out to the masses, and then there's a psychological, warfare that they use against their own troops. And that's how they get these people to do stuff.
That's right. There's disinfo on the public, but also another brand of it internally on the military.
Exactly. I mean, when you go through different stages in military training, like ANOC and all this stuff, Advanced Non-Commissioned Officer School, and all this different training, they teach you to essentially fool these soldiers into just doing stuff and becoming robots and just listening to what you say and not thinking for themselves. That's what they train people to do.
Well, notice
when they get older and they get higher up in ranks, it's easier for the political guys who are like master sergeants, sergeant majors, all of this, to kind of go ahead and start trickling in down to these staff sergeants. Hey, listen to this. This is the truth. Just go with it. Tell your guys this is what's going on.
And the more you BS, the higher you rise up.
Yeah.
And then we're just putting a headline up where Sony won't even block on their platforms ISIS. Neither will Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, but we get censored all the time.
Facebook wants to have a button that's going to tell users whether or not something is fake news or not. But meanwhile, they're going to allow this stuff.
That's right. They're going to let users vote down or ban content because they claim it's not true.
If I go into Mexico...
So now, Solaris, our shows could be, attacked by other people who buy into the mainstream point of view, and we could be targeted. I mean, it's crazy. I'm so glad we're not to that point yet. We still have an internet for a while anyway, where we can get some real information out. What do you think?
I think it's important that we do have an internet and a voice, because without the internet, without communicating on a vast scale, it's going to be a little more difficult. But yeah, I do believe them. I like that episode of Alex Jones, because it's true. I mean, the military is compromised so badly that they're not rational. They're not thinking for themselves. They're goose-stepping. They're literally remote controlled. So you can't go by, you can't trust them. In other words, I mean, they're kind of like irrational to some degree.
And didn't he use the word like robots?
Yeah, I mean, well, listen, I mean, they're entrained. There's no doubt about it. They're literally entrained. So, see what happens with this Jade Helm thing.
Now, explain this whole concept of entrainment, because I'm not real familiar with that. Isn't that a kind of thought control? But it's more than that, isn't it?
It's repetitive negative programming is what it is. It's just this is constant bombardment of negative programming to a point where they become entrained to respond. Auto response system, which is integrated in with negative remote control. Now, I don't know if these people are interconnected with artificial intelligence like I've been interconnected with back in 2004, but I will say that I suspect that there are many candidates in the military that have been involved in artificial telepathy and have been using it. And also, once they're involved in that, they're part of a hive collective, and they're very much controlled. They will do exactly what their master tells them to do unless they break with the program. And if they're in the military, they have not broken with the program. So, yeah, it's pretty concerning on a lot of different levels. And, of course, I take a neutral observation with the Jade Helm thing coming down the pike in July. But still, you've got irrational lawlessness and control and the illusion of control, and everybody's along for the ride as civilians, which I think is a serious situation.
I think this clip just ended. I have another very bizarre clip. And I think we had talked about this at one point where there was a woman, and I think she was called the DC Madam, and she ran a kind of a call girl ring, so to speak, in the White House, but evidently there is something similar, but it's for male prostitutes as well. And I think during the Bush administration, they had a regular flow of male prostitutes into the White House. Now, I know this is shocking for people, and I would have never believed it in a million years until the last 2 or 3 years exactly. I don't know if I'm going to be able to play this clip or not because I just uploaded it and it's still processing it. Can you hear me, Solaris?
Yeah, I can hear you fine, Mark. Yeah.
Okay, I kind of refreshed my studio here. I'll try one more time and see if we can listen to this clip or not. Now, have you heard? You probably have heard of some of this before, right?
I've heard about it. I haven't heard that audio clip, but yeah, it's disgusting when you think about it. It's just like there's so much corruption and it's so filthy, and these people are such poor role models for this country. It's I don't even know what to say anymore, Mark. I really don't.
Let's listen to this.
It's Alex Jones.
It's the time of the season when love runs high. In the time, give it to me easy.
I'm not going to go over their bios for you, but I'm aware of the work of both individuals. The book is excellent. We're not selling it. You can find it online or Amazon.com. Confessions of a D.C. Madam, The Politics of Sex, Lies, and Blackmail. Henry W. Vinson with Nick Bryant. And now for the rest of the hour, I really want to try to give these guys the floor because if I start asking questions, we're going to go down some rabbit trails. Henry Vinson was a male madam over a major gay escort operation that's on record in D.C. And from what I've seen, that's more popular in D.C. from the news we followed than the other way. And then, of course, Nick Bryan has written on the Franklin cover-up and other major issues that we're well-versed on here. The blog is blog.com, confessionsofadcmadam.com. The book is Confessions of a DC Madam. If you want to know why Washington is so controlled and why it's so corrupt, it's blackmail. And you can't even get into the club unless they think you're blackmailable. And this gets into, in the case of the Franklin cover-up, underage, you name it. I interviewed Deborah Jean Palfrey before she died. The famous D.C. Madam. They obviously murdered her. Her death note, suicide note wasn't even in her handwriting. I had her condo manager that she owned, friends send me her lease, her handwriting. I had the Florida State Police calling me about it. I mean, this was a big deal what happened. I was on Fox News, CNN, you name it. So my point is we've studied this. And this is how they're controlling people. So who should start first here? Henry Vinson to give us the overview as a former gay madam, or Nick Bryant to give us some of the larger picture. Where should we start, gentlemen?
Let Henry start with the overview.
Yeah, Henry, for the rest of the 6, 7, 8 minutes of this segment, break down why this is important and what you cover in the book and why folks should investigate it.
Well, I ran the largest gay escort service that's ever been exposed in Washington, D.C.,
And my ultimate downfall was precipitated by the fact that I provided escorts to a CIA asset named Craig Spence, who used my escorts to blackmail politicians and other power brokers. I ultimately became the fall guy for a sprawling conspiracy whose cover-up was engineered at the pinnacle of the Bush 1 administration. And I haven't told my story, and this is the first time I told it, but I've undergone a 25-year character assassination by the media. And I believe the American political system has become a wayward aberration of the ideas it was built upon. And I believe that blackmail has played an integral role in hijacking our political system. And that's my reason.
Anyway, Solaris, Henry W. Vincent might be a good person to interview. What do you think?
Yeah, he sounds like it. Yep.
Yeah, it's
pretty corrupt.
It's over the top. You know,
it is. It's so vicious.
I mean, if you would just think about what kind of, ratings the mainstream media would get if they would talk about this kind of stuff. I mean, people would actually start listening to mainstream media again. But it's just, they're just so controlled. They're just so controlled. They can't talk about stuff like this. And I wonder how much longer we're going to be able to even talk about stuff like this.
Well, I'm going to execute my freedom as long as I can, and I suspect everybody else will as well. And I still think there's a back door. I mean, even if they try to screw with the Internet, there'll be an alternative. You watch. Something will surface where we'll still keep going because we're unstoppable. We really are. The truth is unstoppable. It's an unstoppable force. As evil as these people are and controlling and negative as they are, they have such bad karma. They've created such bad karmic patterning on a universal scale that, there's no place for them to go. I actually feel really sorry for them because they're all screwed, energetically speaking, and we're not here to play into them anymore. I mean, that's the bottom line.
It does seem like some kind of change is about to happen. Mm-hmm. Let's hope for the better. Let's hope that...
and prepare for the worst.
I mean, it kind of makes you, like we've talked about before, it makes you want to think about maybe leaving the United States.
Well, I thought about it too, but I don't think there's a safe zone across the map at this point in the continuum. But I will say, staying in the realm of higher consciousness will change the dynamic. And you have the advantage. We all have the advantage of staying on the higher level and actually being able to influence this world from that perspective, and that almost like a remote influence. In other words, execute your power, or don't just use your voice, but take your intent and do something to change that frequency, alter their evil, and switch the whole plane. And that's my suggestion for people.
Anyway, the power of your own thinking is tremendous.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And focus on thinking those healthy, positive, good thoughts, not out of balance positive, more of a neutral positive. Don't get outrageous with your positive thinking. I think if you can get overboard with your positive thinking, it's almost as bad as negative, but negative is really, really bad.
Right. I've seen some people who are positive that are in denial of what's happening, and they're in their fuzzy little bubbles, and they're like, I'll just stay here and protected, and the world will crash before me, and I'll be okay. Well, it kind of doesn't work that way. You have to be grounded, you know what I mean, as an observer, but also I think the neutral stance is really appropriate.
I like it. That's good. I'm glad you said that. Controlling our thoughts seems to be the key. Sometimes I almost wish Billy wasn't right so much,
He's been spot on, Mark. I'm telling you, I'm really impressed with all of his information, and I think people should look more into his works and see how they're all correlating right now.
Yeah, the book, one of the books I'm reading right now it's called The Might of Thoughts, and you can get it. I think Michael Horn on his theyfly.com. You can get some there. There's a little bit from the book up on the Future of Mankind site. And I want to make sure everyone also visits exopoliticsohio.us. If you Google Ohio Exopolitics, you'll find the website. Solaris, you want to tell people about your two shows quickly?
Sure can. Raven Star's Witching Hour on freedomslips.com, 12 midnight Saturdays, Eastern Standard Time. And, of course, I have Hyperspace on the Dark Matter Radio Network each Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
And tonight I'll be on freedomslips.com. First hour I'll be talking with Betsy Lewis about her new book, which is talking about all these quote-unquote earth changes, whatever you want to call them. And I want to make sure I talk about that volcano in Chile is incredible, isn't it? With the lightning bolts in it. If you guys haven't seen that, you got to look at that film. It looks like something otherworldly. Don't you think, Solaris?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very Mount Doomish, shall we say, Lord of the Rings. Yeah, it's powerful. There's no doubt about it.
I didn't know you could see lightning bolts in the smoke from a volcano. I'd never seen anything like that before.
No, I haven't either. It's pretty powerful. It's very impressive on so many levels. Very destructive. So that's really the voice of the Earth right there. I mean, when mankind thinks he can push this planet around, I think he's in for a big shock.
I think we've gone too far on many different fronts.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Yeah, it's out of balance.
Totally out of balance. Overpopulation, pollution everywhere. We've got to really get back to a love for creation and realizing that we're all interconnected, and take care of your animals, take care of the plants, try to help your fellow human beings, try to think good thoughts, to stay neutral positive, to stay relaxed. If you feel those negative thoughts coming in your mind, push them right out. Your consciousness is like a garden, and you've got to weed your garden. I want to thank Solaris. Thank you very much, Solaris, for joining me this afternoon, and I'll be looking forward to chatting with you again sometime on Dark Matter Radio again.
Yes, absolutely. Come back. And also thank you, Mark. It's been a pleasure as always.
Well, folks, you're listening to Ohio Exopolitics. I want to thank Janet for calling in as well. If you get a chance, join me tonight on freedomslips.com, Studio B. And like I said, I'll be talking to Mary Sutherland the second hour about red-haired giants, and Betsy Lewis first hour about all these earth changes. My name is Mark Snyder. You're listening to Ohio Exopolitics. Have a good evening. We'll talk to you later.